Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Houston, Texas. It's time for Houston Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hello, Houston. Tricia Stutzel here, bringing you another episode of Houston Business Radio. Really excited about the guest that I have on with me today, Mr. Frank Zaccari, CEO of Life Altering Events. He's a 5-time best-selling and 2-time award-winning author. Frank has penned 9 impactful books and co-founded the Trust Process book marketing program, propelling numerous authors to success. He's a passionate mentor, conducting workshops at institutions like Arizona State University and University of California Entrepreneurship Academy, and guiding veterans through the Veterans Treatment Court. Frank, welcome to the show.
Tricia, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
I'm really excited about our conversation today. So the first thing that I want to draw out, Frank, is you're in California, and I've invited you to be on Houston Business Radio. And you and I have a background together through the Houston Regional Veterans Chamber of Commerce. And thank you so much for all you give to that organization. And you've also got some other Houston ties. I want to just give one plug. Thank you, Frank, for allowing so many of us to be authors in this best-selling book. It was an amazing experience. So let's talk about Frank's ties to Houston first.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I love Houston. I used to come to Houston in my high-tech life many years ago and spent a lot of time there. Then I went back to Houston again when the housing meltdown occurred, and Houston was becoming almost like a ghost town. Everyone was leaving; it was a disaster. But what I love about the people of Houston, what I love about the organization, is that they said, we're not going to let this define us, and the city has come back, and the whole community, the whole area, has come back and has brought businesses back in. And it's got a very positive attitude and positive approach to life. And then it started partnering with people like the Houston Regional Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Because what I saw with Houston is they started to look around and it says, all right, what do we have a lot of? Okay. We have a lot of oil and gas, and we have a lot of veterans. Okay. So how now do we take this big block of veterans that we have that are living in the Houston area, in the community, and bring them into the fold? Because these are the kind of people you want to own businesses and be part and be employees. Yeah. I was a CEO for several years. Everybody wants loyalty and persistency and leadership and willingness to work around and find around obstacles and get that way. And I look at Houston, and that's what I see. I see a city who finds a way around whatever the problem is. It will find a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a note, we have the highest concentration in the nation of veterans, second highest, of veterans in the greater Houston area. And we're number 1 for female veterans in the nation here in the greater Houston area. So you're absolutely right. There is a huge market to be served here when it comes to our veterans and how we can help them. And for those of you who are only listening and are not watching the video, the plug that I was giving was on this beautiful book that Frank afforded many of us from the chamber and otherwise, but veterans, to co-author Business Secrets from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. And for most of us, Frank, it was our first time to go through that process. And I know that you have built a business around helping people with that. So would you just give us a short overview of your background to get started, and then we'll take a deeper dive?
Sure. Very thumbnail sketches. I grew up in Western New York in the Buffalo area, and I was the only lottery I ever won was the military lottery, and my draft number was 10. So okay. That pretty much made a lot of decisions. Things were done; they were decided. I enlisted in the Air Force rather than going into the Army. I was during the Vietnam War, and so I was a medic in the military. Near the end of the war, I was not combat medic, but I was in the Air Force during that period of time. when I got out, I went back to school and I got into the high tech world. I don't know how or why, but I did. And I thought, well, I'll stay in high tech for a couple of years. My degree's in finance. I'll go back into the finance world. And 27 years later, I was a CEO of 2 companies up in Seattle, and it was still in high tech. All right. Which I loved. We had a domestic situation change, and I became a single father with my 2 young daughters. And so getting out of the high tech was necessary because I was traveling too much and had to be a full-time father. I took over an insurance agency, which I tell everybody, if you come from high tech, proactive industry, you go to insurance, reactive industry, it's like dying and going to hell. If you're a type A person, help, you're like, oh God. But it was a means to an end. Had to get my daughters through school, had to get them into their first, what they call grown-up jobs, which we did. And they both doing very, very well. I got married again in my 60s. And so my wife had a house in San Diego, which is where I am now. And then I have a house in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we basically go between the two quite frequently. The book thing, for sure, nothing was planned. I didn't plan any of this. I was going through counseling after the divorce, and one of the counselors said, "Frank, you need to journal and write this down." No chance I'll write this down. I'm living it. I want to write it down. It's memorable. So one of my daughters said, "Yeah, Dad, do it." So I do stream of consciousness. I've never been trained as a writer. Never had, not just stream of consciousness, write it down. And then go back and it's starting to make sense a little bit. Then I found Pet Cannabis, who became my publisher, and we put the book out. And the first book was, it was a good book, but I didn't know what I was doing, right? So I did 5 of those that way, not knowing what I was doing, wrote 5 books. And then I said, okay, I'm going nowhere, stop, this isn't working. And then Cat Cannabis calls me back, and I'm driving to Phoenix and in the middle of the desert. And she says, "You got to write again. You're too good." And I said, "Cat, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore." So I said, "Let me get off the freeway." So I'm sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts in Goodyear, Arizona, and it's 110 degrees. And she's saying, "Frank, we're going to do a series. We're going to do a series of books, the Business Secrets series. Okay." And the first one was going to be about business things you don't see coming. And so that one went to number 1. And we figured it out. I met my partner, Melissa Van Oss, and we figured out how to market and promote books, right? So the book goes to number 1. And the second, then Kat comes back to me. She says, "Frank, people say they got their business under control, but their personal life isn't very good. And we need to write about relationship issues because you're a master at failed relationships." Thanks, Kat.
Not a nice compliment.
That was the second book, and it went to, yeah, that one went to number 1. And then we had, life could be doing good, but you get stuck, and that's just the way it is. Everybody gets stuck. So that was the 3rd book. Then I wanted to do the 4th one with veterans. I've always wanted to do this. And David Weaver and you and your group are so gracious to step up and say, yeah, let's be part of this. And what I wanted to show, and this is not just for veterans, it's for anybody. Everything's a transition. Every transition is difficult. So what are you going to do? And what is your goals? And how do you connect? And how do you reach out and find people? And that was what it was all about. And we talked to veterans. They all say, "Oh, I can't write. My story's boring." And so as we did with this one, we sent questions and said, "Here, fill these out. We'll fine tune it for you." And what was amazing was as we were going through, we had 19 contributing authors. And as we were going through it, the women, their stories were so much better. They were so much more in depth. There was so much more emotion. There was so much more detail. And it made a huge difference. And the guys were good, but the guys said, "Yes, I'm there, do this." And then they're pretty much, to the point.
Yeah.
But the women veterans, we had a mom, a military mother, and then we had a woman who flew the troops over. She was a flight attendant, flew the troops over to Vietnam. And we got her perspective on what it was like interacting with the military. So that the thing that I found in doing this book, and the thing that I find every time I go to Houston and meet with you and your team, is there's this resiliency. Okay, we're gonna not just do Okay, here's something just for veterans. Okay, that's wonderful. There's 45,000 entities that deal with veterans. But you go to the other side and you go into the Houston community and you say, okay, Houston, we've got these people. You either got great employees or great businesses here. And what do you need? And how do we make it better for you? As opposed to what I see in some veteran groups that come on and say, look, we served you and now you owe us. Okay, well, nobody owes you anything. No one owes you a thing. So what do you bring? What value? And when I read your story, Carlene and Latoya Westbrook, the story was, this is the value that I have. This is how you take all those skills that you've developed and you translate it, because the world is changing radically. I interviewed a futurist named Dr. Edward Hess from the University of Virginia at the Darden School. And he told me, he said, Frank, children that are in kindergarten today, right now today, 65% of them are going to work in a career that doesn't exist today. It doesn't exist.
Wow.
And I said, no, that's pretty intense. And he said, look over history. You went from the Industrial Revolution, those jobs didn't exist. And you went to the automation, that didn't exist in the tech world. He says, so it's a constantly evolving thing. So finding your value and finding your skills, and how do your skills translate? And I hear this all the time, particularly with veterans. I get ready to go, and I don't have any skill. Yeah, you do. Yes, you do. But let's sit down, and when you do a great job with working with veterans and working with the community, here's what they bring to the party. Here's the value proposition. Now, doesn't this make sense in your business? And if you have a business, doesn't it make sense to say, look, this is what I can bring, and you have to have value. It just can't be, I serve, so help me out here. It's got to be, I have value, and what it is. And you guys do a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love the mission of this particular chamber, because it's not just about networking. It really is about identifying all of those amazing veterans out there who have opened a business. And you've heard my story. John Cacalis, many of us spent years as business owners without ever identifying as a veteran, because we didn't think we needed to. I can do it myself. You and I talked about this on your show, right? Those
Yes,
5 words,
yes.
I can do it myself. I don't need a handout. And that's really not the message here. The message is, we need to know who you are, because we may need you to help the next guy or gal who's opening a business. Come out and mentor them. And that's really important to me, right? We all have something of value to give back to the community. And I think that's really important. Well, I want to circle back around, Frank. When I first introduced you, I talked about Trust the Process, book marketing program. I'd love for you to talk more about that, so that our audience can really understand the work that you're doing with people.
Sure. Be happy to. My partner is Melissa Van Oss, and she lives in Washington, D.C., and she was on my show. And she had written a book, and we started talking about, what are you doing and how are you marketing? And so she had a lot of this process already figured out. And I said, well, let's collaborate, because I think we could productize this. Okay, so then we tried it on ourselves first. We did it on ourselves, and our books went to #1. I said, okay, we might have something here. And then we started looking at, well, what are the things that are preventing it? And there's a ton of myths in the publishing world. Authors, all they want to do is get the book done. Okay, you're writing a book. I just want it done, because it drives you crazy. All right, so you got it done. Now what do I do? I put it on Amazon. Everybody's going to go buy it. Okay, doesn't work like that. 11,000 books are released every single day in the United States. 11,000. Okay, how are you going to stand out? What are you going to do different? And so what we did with our program, Melissa and I, is that we meet with an author first, potential author, and say, #1, why do you want to do this? Okay, if you want to do a legacy, a book for your grandchildren, then okay, we're probably not the right people for it. But if you want to write a book that's going to enhance the value of what you're doing, help your business open up speaking engagements, webinars, workshops, and all of those kinds of things, then let's talk. And then it comes down to consistency and continuity, because the first thing that every author thinks is, oh, my publisher, because they tell you this, my publisher is going to market my book. No, they're not. Publishers publish. They don't market. That's it. Okay, now they might put out a press release that nobody reads, but they're not going to market your book. Okay, now it's up to you. And then they'll say, okay, well, I was told I should have a launch party. And so I'm going to get this big party, this big event at this hotel or whatever. And I said, how many people have said they're going to come? 150. How many people actually show up? 10, 6, 4, doesn't matter. So you're spending all this time and energy when you could be sending a consistent and a message, something better than that, right? So we create a whole campaign. We do the campaign. We create the content working with the author, and then we send it to them. We say, here, post this on this day at this time. All right. So the first step is, who are you, author, and why should anybody care? I would say it nicer than that, obviously. But here's what the skill sets are. So we spend a period of time putting out posts about who this author is. Then we go into the launch process. Okay, now you know who the author is. Here's this book that's coming, and this is why it's important. Now you know who she is or he is. This is the book. This is what we've been prepping you for. On this day, go buy it. And we're going through a whole launch sequence. So we have a social media campaign. We have an email campaign. We have a live video campaign. We have people on my show and other people's shows during the course of this thing. And the net is release day is the magic. And you drive everybody to buy the book on that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've now had 13 in a row, 13 consecutive titles have gone to bestseller. 11 went to number 1. 5 have won awards. So we're thinking, okay, I think we've got this kind of figured out.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of sitting down with the authors, and we do a real hard screen to it, Trish. We say no more than we say yes.
Okay.
And if do you want to use it as an evergreen tool for a business or for your life or for something along those lines? Are you willing to be coached? Right? Because when you write a book, everybody and their brother and their uncle's cousin is an expert.
Of
and
course.
Say, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And I get a kick out of it. And I did a talk at the Military Influencers Conference in Las Vegas about this. And I said to the people there, I said, who are the smartest parents in the world? Smartest parents in the world. And they went, well, who? And I said, people with no children. They are the smartest parents in the world because they've never done it, but they can tell you what to do, but they've never done it. It's the same with a book. Okay. So you can write a book. You have an editor. You got to have editors to do it. And then you got to market it. So when my third book hit number 1, I get a call from a big distribution house. They actually called me. And they said, why aren't you using this? And I said, okay, what do you bring to the party? And they said, well, we're going to put your book in Walmart. We're going to put your book in Target. And we're going to put your book in bookstores. And I said, how are you going to do that? And they said, well, we got this giant online catalog. And I said, like the old Yellow Pages? Remember the old Yellow Pages? That big giant book?
Yes.
And I said, so I'm one line in a big giant book?
Right.
And they said, well, yeah. And I said, they're going to buy 10,000 copies of my book off of this one line? And they said, no, Frank. What you do is you create the demand for it. And then when you are driving 8 to 10,000 sales, then we'll put all our muscle behind it. And I said, if I can get to 8 to 10,000 by myself, I don't need you.
Right.
I've already figured it out. So that's what we're doing with Trust the Process. So authors are out there and you want to write a book and people say, well, what do I write about? You write about something you know.
Mm-hmm.
You start with something you know. And everybody has a story. And this is what we had to do with the veteran, right? You have a story. And there's somebody out there who's going through, probably thousands of people are going through what you are going through or what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
And that story, that book could be the thing that triggers them to continue going forward or gives them hope. I'm speaking at the the VA Department of Defense Veterans Suicide Conference in 1 month in Portland, Oregon. And that's what this is. And we're not talking about publishing a book. We're talking about the connection portion of it. Is that your story matters and your story can help somebody else, right? Help them move forward. And then it comes down to, well, I don't know how to write. Well, we got people who can do that. We got people who can help you write it. We have editors. We have people who can do graphics. The whole thing is we tell the author, if you can cut and paste, we can run the campaign for you. And are you willing to listen? Big thing. Because are you willing to listen and take direction and say, here it is? And one person told me, Frank, if you post something 3 times a week or 4 times a week, you're annoying people. And we said, okay, you've heard of Coca-Cola. You've heard of McDonald's. How many times do you see ads for them? Every day, multiple times a day. And when I was at the Military Influencers Conference in Las Vegas, there was a group that was involved in the second Top Gun movie. So they were involved in the production side from the military side.
Yeah.
And so I said to them, how far in advance did you start working on promoting that movie? Everyone knew it was coming. Everyone knew the first one. Everybody knew Tom Cruise. 7.5 months before the release, they started marketing the movie. So consistency and continuity of the message is so important, and that's what we excel at. I mean, Melissa is a master at it, and we create this and say, on this day at this time, post it. Now, why is that important? Because social media, if we're doing the social media part, social media, if you don't get a response, not a click, not a yes, or a statement, or a comment, if you don't get a comment within the first 15 to 30 minutes, that post goes away. Have you ever seen a post and you say, no, I saw that. Where did it go? And you can't find it?
Yeah.
Well, nobody responded. So therefore, the algorithm pushes it out. It's gone. So we know when it's going to be posted. We comment on it. We share it. We send it to our networks. And that's how you start that spider approach that goes through. And then it comes down to you then touch your key people that you can send emails to and say, hey, I'm doing this. Can you help me out? Yeah. And then live video. Live video is critical because now you're telling your story. And as you and I said before we started filming here, sometimes you can get a little long-winded like I'm doing right now. But on those videos, we tell them minute and 30 seconds, no more. And we write the script for them.
Okay.
Now you can tune it up to make it sound more like you, but
right.
Minute and 30 seconds. First one we did it with timer, stopwatch. And so when you hit a minute and 30 seconds, I said, stop. Well, I didn't get to the point yet. And I said, exactly. You didn't get to the point. Get to the point. Do it now. Here, say this.
Yeah.
And then leave them wanting more, right? Okay, what is this? And there's something about it. And then we create an author page, one-page author sheet for the author.
Okay.
And then when we want to go to interviews or other certain things, we have them send that out. And then we have an award-winning journalist. And if the author wants to have a news article, not a press release, no one reads press releases, news article.
Yeah.
Okay. Publications are lazy. And if you send them an article that's already done and they have space or it fits it, they'll plug it in. So the last two that we did were picked up by 117 and 171 different publications, including Bloomberg, USA Today, New York Times, etc., because they don't want to pay for content and they don't want to pay for journalists anymore. Mm-hmm. So if you send them something that's already done, they may just pop it in. And then we'll do virtual book tours if the author wants to do that, where we get, if they call themselves book geeks, right? Okay. We've done enough of these where we'll say, look, the book is about this. I don't want somebody who does zombies talking about a family or relationship book. I want somebody who does that. Like when we did the Battlefield book, we had veterans.
Right.
Do it. Veterans read it and commented about it. And the beauty is when you reach out and you ask people or friends or you build a relationship or help, they will help you. Because everybody says, how can I help? How can I help? But we never tell them how, right? No, I can do it. Typical way you said before, I'll figure it out, right?
Yeah, I'll just
no,
do
you're
it.
not. You're not going to figure it out by yourself. These people are willing to help. Tell them, do this for me, please.
Well,
and that's how the program works. It's so far so good.
I've seen part of this process work live with the book that we put together. And using that process where we reached out, you fed us everything we needed. Here's an email template, send this out by email, put it out on social. And I had so many people interested because I was engaging with them, saying that I had written my story in this book. And so many people reached back out to me and said, I bought the book and it was amazing. And so I know we didn't use the whole process around this particular book, but we used parts of it and I know that it works. And I think it's really important to have somebody like you on your side if you're going to write a book, because you're right. You write a book and then what? You don't know how to get through the rest of the process. And that's what you guys have built out. And I think is so amazing. So Frank, as we close up, can you share the name of your show, where people can find it, and how they might reach out and contact you? I know you're also on social, so if you want to give those channels as well.
We have my website is frankzaccari.com. We have a new one coming out, authorstrusttheprocess.com. It's not done yet, but it'll be done soon. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm easy to find. LinkedIn usually is the best place. I get a lot of emails. frankzaccari@gmail.com. I keep everything simple because I'm old and I can't remember all the passwords and logins.
Yep.
So let's make it simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just too many.
Yeah.
You can call me 916-718-5517. I'm easy to find, and we're very open to have a conversation. With our new site, Authors Trust the Process, there'll be information where people can fill out what it is they're trying to do or what they want to do, and then we'll set up a time to meet with them.
Wonderful. Frank, thanks so much for being with me today. This is so much fun, and we may have to have you back to talk about some other things.
Okay. Anytime. Happy to do it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And that's all the time we have for today's show. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Houston Business Radio. Until then, stay tuned, stay inspired, and keep thriving in the Houston business community.